Stop playing with the microphone. I'm telling you. We are back once again, Nutrient Health Project podcast. I am Andrew Frisch. This is my beautiful wife, Holly Danielle Frisch.
Hi.
We are here with episode number 22 on testosterone and estrogen. There's a number of reasons that I wanted to record this episode. There's a number of reasons we want to do like this and the next couple of episodes that are all on hormones. Basically because I feel like they are believe it or not, underrepresented and misunderstood. So like I made a Facebook post a couple days ago about if you are going into the doctor's office potentially looking for antidepressants or just a solution to depression or anxiety, one of the things you might want to do is actually get sex hormones tested, because having low testosterone, for example, is it could potentially cause depressive symptoms in men and women. So if you go into a doctor and tell them you're kind of dealing with depression, chances are they're not going to run a sex hormone panel, and they're not even going to see that, oh, you're just low in testosterone. They're going to give you an SSRI or some other antidepressant, which is going to kind of come with its own host of issues. So I wanted to talk more about the different hormones. Like I said, today we're doing testosterone and estrogen. And I want to kind of do what we do in this podcast is take something that's a little more complicated and try to break it down and simplify it. And today we're going to be basically talking about four main things, but actually I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we get into that, Holly, a little quick note. Go for it.
If y'all want to leave us a 5-star review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we would greatly appreciate it.
Very much so, because this podcast is a labor of love. Mm-hmm. I had the Love Boat theme song pop into my head, but I will not sing that. So it's a labor of love. This is something that we do in addition to the clients and the coaching and the consulting and the learning and everything that we're doing. Because, again, like my mission in life is to help people be happier and healthier. And if one way I can do that is by recording a podcast to take some kind of complex things and make them simpler, we want to do that. And the way you guys can give back is just by leaving us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. If you have questions or comments, if you want to reach out to us, if you're not already friends with us on Facebook or Instagram following us, feel free to send anything to NutrientPodcast@gmail.com, and we will answer those questions on air. So were you going to say something?
No, I'm just copying you.
Just copying me?
Yeah.
Okay. So, episode number 22, testosterone and estrogen today. Next week, we're doing thyroid hormone next week, thyroid hormones next week, and then the week after that, we're looking at doing insulin and cortisol. So I might switch those up, but we're going to basically talk about all of these things and help you guys get some answers and some guidance and improve your overall physical well-being. So, again, today, episode 22, testosterone and estrogen, we're going to be covering 4 basic areas with today's podcast.
So number 1 is going to be the symptoms from high or low testosterone and estrogen.
Number 2, potential causes for those high or low levels.
Number 3 is how to improve your situation with lifestyle factors.
Yep. And then number 4, I feel like I do this every episode, suggested supplements to assist. So we're going to talk about kind of some core supplements and then like some insurance, extra credit, boost your shit supplements, I guess. I don't know.
Some extras.
Yeah, some extras there. So.
All right, so let's get rolling. So how could someone know if their testosterone or estrogen is out of whack?
Out of whack. So basically they're going to be, essentially 2 ways in terms of this podcast, at least. I would say number 1, you're going to, and we'll talk about this in 2 seconds, there are going to be symptoms that can kind of give you clues as to testosterone or estrogen being out of whack. I said we'll talk about those here in a second. So that would be number 1. The problem with symptoms is it doesn't give you a definitive answer. It's like you kind of have to like guess and maybe get on like Dr. Google, which that's a whole, can of worms that you don't want to open up. So it's just not a definitive thing. It's like it can give you hunches and suspicions, but it's not a certain thing. The second thing you can do is have blood work, and that blood work can give you like an actual snapshot of the current state of your hormones. But even that, it's just more information to add to your potential symptoms and suspicions, because even with something like testosterone, if you get testosterone checked, first off, testosterone can vary wildly from, just different times throughout the day, even I think by hour by hour. But other things can affect it. So if you have a bad night's sleep, that could affect your testosterone. If you have a really hard workout before you do your blood draw, that can affect your testosterone. So it's not that blood work and lab markers are perfect, but they can give you, kind of, again, more information to add to the symptoms that you're thinking about. So
what kind of symptoms would someone be dealing with?
Well, all right, so there's a little bit of a list here. So a lot of what we'll talk about today is, obviously testosterone and estrogen, but we're going to, obviously the sexes are different. So we'll talk about testosterone and estrogen in men and testosterone and estrogen in women. And then we'll also talk about like high and low testosterone and estrogen in men, high and low testosterone and estrogen in women. So, so basically as far as symptoms, these are like symptoms and considerations. So some of these might not necessarily be a symptom you're noticing, but it's going to be like a reason that you want to get the hormones in check in addition to symptoms. So a little bit of a list here, but so women with higher estrogen are actually going to have an increased risk of breast and endometrial cancers, right? And obviously you don't want to mess around with cancers. Unfortunately, that did make me just think about yesterday when you told me to hand, like, here's your can, sir. Like, you handed me a can and you said, sir. And I was like, what the fuck did you just say?
No.
Here's your cancer. Oh, thanks. But yeah, so women with higher estrogen may be at an increased risk for breast and endometrial cancers. Women with low estrogen are going to potentially suffer from osteoporosis, migraine headaches, kind of lack of menses. Obviously, like the onset of menopause is defined as like estrogen dropping low. Women with higher testosterone may have an increased risk of endometrial cancer, as well as things like masculinization. So like you'll see facial hair growth, maybe a more developed Adam's apple, even facial structure. Like, we spend a lot of times in gyms, and you'll see and hear women who, like, the voice, the vocal cords, kind of like the voice deepens. Maybe their jawline becomes a little more defined, or like the brow, like, the depending on what they're doing as far as like steroids and hormone manipulation, like the facial structure can actually change too. So it's also common to see kind of together women who have higher testosterone. It's common to see them also suffering from PCOS and or an increased risk of insulin resistance. And we'll talk a little bit more about how those things kind of go hand in hand later. For men, high testosterone could lead to things like increased risk behavior. So like there's a correlation between high testosterone and dopamine, testosterone and dopamine rather. So as you increase testosterone, you increase dopamine, or you increase dopamine activity. So, and dopamine is that kind of like risk-taking, reward-seeking behavior. So as someone increases their testosterone, they're going to have increased risk-taking behavior, which could also include like increased sexual activity, like just kind of like going to the bar and not giving a damn who you hook up with. So like you have a increased risk for obviously getting more STDs if you're doing something like that. Of course, the usual things that people talk about in the gym, like acne, back knee, things like that, hypertension, overly high libido, like I just said, even a high red blood cell count. So these are things that can kind of come if you have higher testosterone. For both sexes, actually, for low testosterone, both sexes this is like a number of issues. And like I said, this is kind of where the Facebook post I made kind of was a segue. We already knew we were doing this episode, but the Facebook post I made was kind of a segue into it, because this is the list of things that low testosterone will do for both sexes. Decrease lean body mass, so like less muscle on your body, and that's not a good thing, because if you have less muscle on your body, now your body's burning less calories, so you can't eat as much. You're gonna more easily put on fat and just again not be able to utilize the calories as much. You're obviously also going to, with that decreased lean mass, decreased strength, decreased endurance, decreased just athletic ability, right? Decreased feeling good ability. You're also going to have decreased libido. You're, again, like I said at the top of the episode, potential risk for increased depression, increased risk of certain diseases like cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, even metabolic disease, and even stroke. So Continuing on down the list, so obviously like low testosterone is a big problem for men and for women. It's not just a guy thing. For men, if they typically we don't think of needing estrogen, but this is something I've dealt with myself because like, and we'll get into more of why this matters. But if a guy is lean and doesn't have a lot of body fat on him, he has a higher risk of being kind of low estrogen. Because and I'll get into that here in a minute, but if a male has low estrogen, that can actually lead to osteoporosis, low libido, joint issues, also depression, irritability, increased risk of cardiovascular symptoms. So those are like brain fog is another one. If a guy has low estrogen, those are things that typically we don't think of because, I was even guilty of it a couple of years ago where you just think, well, I want testosterone as high as I can and estrogen as low as I can. And that's a kind of a recipe for disaster.
So these are the symptoms, but what lab markers would someone want to get a better picture?
So really, the best way to do it would just be to get like a full sex hormone panel. And if you get a full sex hormone panel, that should come with like LH and FSH, which is luteinizing hormone, and follicle stimulating hormone, follicular. Yeah, so remove that. Let me try that sentence again. LH is luteinizing hormone. We've been talking so much about your cycle and adapting your nutrition to it. I have follicular in my head. But follicle stimulating hormone is FSH. Say that 5 times fast. We're going to go back to the tongue twisters episode. So you would want LH, FSH. You want free and total test. You want E2 or estradiol. That's just, you have different types of estrogen, but like E2 is called estradiol. Progesterone, you would want DHEA sulfate or DHEA-S, and DHT if possible. DHT, I believe, is dihydrotestosterone. It's basically like a more condensed, stronger form. I think it's like 3 times more androgenic than regular testosterone. So, fun fact, some people can actually boost DHT with creatine supplementation. Not everybody, but some people can. So, other fun fact, I know you're itching to talk, but other fun fact with DHT is for some people, increasing DHT is what leads to male pattern baldness. So, kind of a give and take there. You get stronger, but you're going to be bald. Yeah, not always. Like I said, that is a potential thing though. So.
Yeah, so one of the things we can do is, review client lab markers now.
We can indeed, which has been awesome. It's been like a superpower kind of added to the mix because, again, like I said, with the symptoms and lab markers, all I've ever had to go off of is symptoms, and trying to like kind of find patterns in symptoms is difficult versus finding patterns in lab markers and then marrying that to symptoms. Now I can start to kind of pair things together, right? If someone tells me like I always have a sweet tooth and I'm always craving sweets later in the day, that might make me think of some things. Maybe it's a cortisol issue, maybe it's a blood sugar issue. Let me look at your lab markers. Oh, hey, you've got, your fasted insulin is high, your fasted glucose is high, and your A1C is high, your triglycerides are high. You might be dealing with some insulin resistance, and we can actually go about fixing that. So we can indeed, looking at lab markers, like I said, to kind of identify those patterns based on the functional ranges in your lab work rather than the standard reference ranges.
And what's the difference between functional ranges and standard reference ranges?
So functional ranges are, reference ranges just as they are. Like if you, and this has happened with a handful of clients where I've asked like when's the last time they had blood work done, and like, X amount of months, everything was in range. I'm like, can I take a look at it? And I think just the 2 most recent, both of them told me that everything was in range. I took a look at it and compared it to the functional ranges. One had 21 things that were out of range, and then the other one I think had 15. It was either 15 or 17. So the difference between them is that reference ranges, when you go to get blood work at your normal old Joe doctor, and they give you the blood work and it says everything is in range, or maybe a little bit was out of range or whatever. Those reference ranges are based on the average American. So, and the functional ranges are based on like healthy individuals. So most of the people that we work with want to be healthy, not standard.
To like standard reference ranges are based on the standard American.
Exactly. So, and kind of like I mentioned back in episode 17 when we talked about blood sugar, 88% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. So, again, if the reference ranges you're being compared to is like kind of compared to like 100% of the people that have done the blood work, and you think that 88% of those people that have done the blood work aren't very healthy, why would you, if you're in the game to be healthy and optimal and feel good, what good does it do you to compare yourself to 88% of people out of 100 that weren't healthy, right? You just really kind of want to focus on those 12% of people that are actually healthy. Mm-hmm. So the functional ranges, when you look at them, some of them are like really, really close. So like if you get, comprehensive metabolic panel is like one of the things that most doctors would do. It's called a CMP. When you have that CMP done, some of the things on there would be your sodium and potassium levels. Those aren't wildly different from the functional range to the standard reference ranges. Excuse me. But other ones are like, if you look at like blood sugar ones, so glucose, pretty big difference. If you look at the inflammatory markers, like those are a pretty big difference, right? Because again, if you're comparing yourself to someone who's not healthy, they're probably going to have, blood sugar issues. They're probably going to have inflammation. They're probably going to have increased oxidative stress. So all of those things in the body that aren't necessarily like shouldn't be happening are going to be happening. And you're again comparing yourself to like that average individual versus someone who's actually healthy. So for example, like if we talk total testosterone, if you're looking at a lab panel, blood work that you've just done on the sex hormone panel, you'll see total testosterone on there. You should have total testosterone and free testosterone. But just for an example, total testosterone on the reference range for men is going to be anywhere from 250 to 1100 nanograms per deciliter. Okay, so just think of that, 250 to 1100. Whereas the functional range for that same marker for men is 700 to 1000, right? So it's a lot more of a narrower thing because, again, if you're unhealthy, chances are your testosterone is probably going to be low. So that's where the reference range is 250 to 1100, but the optimal range is 700 to 1000, right? The same thing for women. On the reference range, on the standard reference range, it's anywhere from 2 to 45 nanograms per deciliter, whereas the functional range is 35 to 45. So we go from 2 to 45 to 35 to 45. It's a much narrower range. And if you're looking at the numbers or listening to the numbers, you can tell that really the functional range on those testosterone numbers is basically saying like, hey, the number should be higher than what they're accepting in the standard reference ranges. So
we talked about the symptoms, but like what might cause testosterone or estrogen to be out of the functional range?
The causes. Here we get. Okay, so now this is the nitty gritty. So a lot of these things are going to be kind of commonalities where you'll see them pop up for both testosterone and estrogen because there's some relations there. So I've got kind of a list, just general for both sexes, for both hormones. All of these things can cause issues. So if you have increased inflammation in your body, if you're dealing with obesity, if you're dealing with poor detoxification in your body, because your body, like, this isn't to talk about like the slim teas and detox teas and 3-day detox, spend your weekend in the bathroom 3-day plan, just all of the junk that like your body actually does detoxify. There are different, like you have methylation pathways. You have, glutathione. I'm out of my element because I didn't make notes on the detoxification pathways right now. But you have, I want to say it's like 6 or 7, but I might be pulling that out of my ass. But your body has natural detoxification processes that it goes through, and you need to be able to support that. So if you have poor detoxification, that's something where, like the extra estrogen and testosterone you have, if it hasn't been used, your body will try to essentially like detoxify it and get it out of your system. And if you have poor detoxification, so say for example, like a woman is constipated, And instead of being able to get rid of that estrogen out of the body, it's just kind of sitting there. It's going to cause problems, right? Because it's still estrogen. It's sitting there, and now it's been conjugated, and the body's trying to get rid of it, and it's not going anywhere because of poor detoxification or maybe poor gut health in addition to it. So the list would be, again, just the top of the head: inflammation, obesity, poor detoxification, poor metabolic health, poor gut health. Again, many of these will go together. So just like I said, like your gut health and your natural detoxification. So those are all things to think about. And these, again, all of those, obesity is kind of obvious, right? You just kind of look in the mirror or step on the scale and you know if you're overweight or not. Inflammation, there are lab markers that you can do to find out if you're inflamed. Those would be like your CRP or C-reactive protein. It's like on the marker, on the lab marker, it'll be like HSCRP. You could do interleukin 6 or IL-6. You could do homocysteine. And we should do an inflammation episode someday soon. I think it would be episodes, because there's a lot to talk about with inflammation. And then metabolic health, you're going to want to look at like your insulin, your glucose, your A1C, again, like a lipid panel, see where you're at with that. Gut health, you can look at different markers. I was going to say you could also even just do like gut microbiome testing. I think like GI Effects is one that was recommended to me, and then GI Map I think is another one. I know there's a company called Viome with a V too, but I have zero experience with them, and I don't know if they're reputable. I know they're reputable. I just don't know if the results would be applicable to what I'm talking about here. So continuing on as far as like causes here, so more specifically, like there are some things that would cause, outside of everything I just mentioned. Some guys might have low testosterone due to like a pituitary dysfunction or potentially a testicular dysfunction. Like if you had like trauma to like one of your or both of your testicles, sorry if you have, but like trauma or just like other diseases that would affect that as well. So estrogen can be high in men. So I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the podcast, but in men, so obesity like will lead to excess aromatase activity. So your fat tissue that you have on your body produces something. Are you stretching or just like awkwardly holding? I don't know if you have like something behind your back you're gonna surprise me with. Like, did you get me a new car?
Behind my back.
But I have the keys back there. I don't know. But so your body fat produces an enzyme called aromatase, and aromatase, what it does is takes testosterone and converts it into estrogen. So if you have more body fat on you, it's going to be producing more aromatase, which will then convert that testosterone into more estrogen. Okay, so that's one thing. Basically, obesity leading to excess aromatase activity, it can cause, let me back up. Obesity leads to higher aromatase activity. Insulin resistance obviously leads to obesity. Insulin is another thing that can play into this because you have another hormone called sex hormone binding globulin, or SHBG. And like the name infers, sex hormone binding globulin, that means it kind of comes in and like binds with like testosterone, and it'll essentially take that testosterone out of the game, and it pulls it out onto the sideline. There's an inverse relationship between insulin and sex hormone binding globulin. So if you have insulin resistance, then your chances are you're going to have lower SHBG, which will cause you to have higher testosterone, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
Yeah. So think about it like this. Like you and I are both super insulin sensitive, right? We have like really, 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 really good levels of insulin sensitivity. So because of that, because we have very low levels of insulin, both of our sex hormone binding globulin levels are high, right? Yeah. They were out of range. Because of that, because we have higher levels of SHBG, that is bringing our testosterone levels down somewhat. Because higher levels of SHBG, it's going out there and grabbing some of that testosterone out of circulation.
That makes sense.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you flip that around and someone has insulin resistance and their insulin is not functioning as healthy as it should, but they have just like, less quality insulin sensitivity, then insulin is going to be higher. So SHBG would be lower, which means testosterone would be higher because there's not as much SHBG in the blood binding up the testosterone.
You have excess.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so that would be another one that can kind of cause issues there. That's a note that I don't need to read because I've already kind of talked about it. I basically just wanted to say, like, there will be cases like trauma or certain cancers. Essentially, a lot of it, when it comes down to your testosterone or estrogen being out of whack, a lot of it is going to be lifestyle related.
So, like, in other words, it's preventable.
Exactly, which is what we're going to get into momentarily.
So, what does somebody do if they have these markers that are outside of the functional ranges?
So, i.e., what lifestyle factors do they want to improve, right? So that would be the main thing. Like if someone has these markers and they're outside of the range and they're not sure what to do, the first thing, I think everybody wants to reach for a supplement, right? That's like every client I have, anytime I have a conversation,
Take a pill.
if I haven't seen somebody for like 6 months, like, oh, have you heard about this? And have you seen about this? And like, and I love doing it. I love, giving feedback on supplements. Unfortunately, 9 times out of 10, it's like, yeah, don't take that. Nope, don't buy that. Yep, you don't need that. Here's a better version of that. So, but supplements are still just that, right? They supplement something else. So if you can solve these things with a healthy diet and healthy lifestyle, why not do that? I know, and again, this is coming from a supplement junkie, right? I've got like over
cabinets.
over 60 something like different nootropics in the cabinets. And I mean, I'm always like kind of buying things and exploring and experimenting, but I also feel like I've got a pretty good handle on the lifestyle side of stuff between the two of us.
Yeah.
So, but lifestyle factors first. Lifestyle and diet first, supplement later, which is why we've got it in this order on the podcast. So you guys can listen to the lifestyle factors first and then look at supplements after you've gotten the lifestyle factors in place, right? Mm-hmm. So, lifestyle factors to consider when you're looking at improving your hormone health. And if you have, again, questions on any of this stuff, like please NutrientPodcast@gmail.com. We're always taking questions. If I don't answer them right away in the next episode, know that I am putting them on the Google Docs for the next Q&A episode. So that was a fun one that we did a couple ones back. So lifestyle factors to take into consideration. Stress management. That's a big one, and I think it's highly underrated and highly under-practiced. So if you have a job, and we just did episode 20 and 21, we're on how stress affects you and what we do to mitigate our stress. But think of the stress that you have in your life. Sleep stress. Do you not get enough sleep? Do you get too much sleep? Calorie stress. Are you not getting enough calories? Are you getting too many calories? Training stress. Are you training too much? Are you not training enough? Right? And on and on. Like work stress, life stress, perceived stress. Do you think that you're stressed? Right? So stress management is huge because that is strongly correlated with inflammation. And, if you want to know more about stress, go back and listen to episode 20 and 21. Another thing you can do is get a consistent sleep schedule. So that cannot be emphasized and underlined enough, because one bad night of sleep, like I said earlier when we were talking about the blood panels, one bad night of sleep can whack your testosterone. It can knock your insulin out of line. It can knock your ghrelin and leptin out of line. These are like hunger and satiety hormones. So it is important to have a consistent sleep schedule, and that doesn't mean consistently bad, right? That doesn't mean like going to bed at the same time like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then it's Friday, bitches, and like doing whatever you want to on Fridays and Saturdays to try to like turn it around on Sunday. So, and I know it's easier said than done, but it should still be done as often as you possibly can, right? If you're off by an hour or two, that's fine. But if you're doing like I used to do, where it's like, hey, I'm going to go to bed at 7 Monday through Thursday, and then I'm going to stay up until midnight on Friday, like you're hurting. You're putting yourself in an early grave. Another thing, kind of, you get better sleep, you wake up earlier, you can get more sunlight. So that getting sunlight, especially earlier in the day, will help reset your circadian rhythm, and it'll kind of like let your body know Hey, I want to get, I just heard through Huberman, I think it's like it resets it to where your body knows like 14 hours or 16 hours after you get that sunlight, that like through evolution, we know that, all right, 14 or 16 hours after I get the sunlight, it's going to be time for bed. So it's just kind of a way to wake you up. Sunlight obviously also helps with vitamin D, and vitamin D is a prohormone, which has direct correlations to estrogen, testosterone, and a million, thyroid hormone, all this stuff. You can improve your blood sugar levels. So like I said, insulin resistance. If you have insulin resistance, you want to get that in check. So how would you improve your blood sugar levels? Resistance training, which is the next one, but you could do resistance training. That'll help. You could do glucose disposal agents. You could start incorporating something like berberine, or metformin if you have the prescription for that. Between the two, I would pick berberine. Alpha lipoic acid, cinnamon. There's all kinds of different things you can do. You could also just go for a walk after you eat, again, making things easier and not having to be a supplement situation. Like after you eat, go for a 10 to 15 minute walk. There are studies that show that that's as effective as something like metformin. So, like I said, improving your physical activity, weight training, resistance training, especially because that resistance training is going to work the muscles, and the muscles that you have are going to be essentially like a glucose sink, and they'll help balance out your blood sugar, but you'll also get kind of a increased testosterone response from resistance training. So improve your blood sugars, improve your physical activity. If I make it through one episode without tripping over my tongue, soon we're gonna hire somebody to edit these, and you guys will think like night and day. He is flawless, and it's just because like all of my tongue twisters got cut out.
Yeah.
So working on lowering your inflammation, and like I said, that all of those, stress management helps reduce your inflammation. Getting a consistent sleep schedule reduces your inflammation. Improving your blood sugar reduces inflammation all the way down. Improving your gut health would be another one. So gut dysbiosis, where your gut bacteria is kind of out of whack, is strongly correlated with a lot of these as well, especially with inflammation. So that is a list, like I said, all the way down. What do we got? Like 8 things on there. Stress management, get a consistent sleep schedule, get more sunlight, improve your blood sugar levels, improve your physical activity, especially resistance training, work on lowering your inflammation, and improve your gut health.
And then you mentioned supplements at the beginning.
At the beginning and multiple times through this. Oh, good Lord, my back is sore. Holy wow. Okay. We hit back hard yesterday, and like I got the middle of my back super, super, super good. Anyways, So weightlifting tangent aside, yes, I did. So like I said, first I'm going to cover some core supplements. So these are the things that I'm going to break this down. Basically, like by if you have high testosterone or low testosterone, if you have like high estrogen or low estrogen, I'm going to break this down so you know like what supplements to take for those certain hormones. These are the core ones, meaning like these are things that your body needs or can vastly use to improve those hormone levels. And then after we go through these core supplements, then I'm going to have basically kind of like the extra insurance supplements, the fancy pants ones. So, but just because they have that cool name, fancy pants supplements, that's the official term, does not mean that you should choose those over these boring, everyday see them at the grocery store. First off, don't buy them at the grocery store. Get if you're going to get supplements, and even at a GNC, I'm not crazy about. We've talked about like supplement brands in the past, but just as a quick aside, the ones I always recommend would be like Thorne Research is a really good brand. If you're wanting to keep things like reasonably affordable, you can get into higher level ones like Metagenics that are just like more expensive, but like Thorne Research is a good one. They're still like kind of a little higher price than other ones you would look at. Life Extension, I've had good experience with them. Jarrow or Yarrow, I always said Jarrow, but I heard one of my mentors call it Yarrow the other day, and I was like, oh shit, existential crisis, I've said it wrong this whole time. But who am I thinking? Who am I forgetting? Seeking Health, as far as I know, is a pretty good supplement brand. Now Sports is a good brand. Who am I forgetting? Is that everybody?
I feel like it is.
I know there's some more in there, but I'm not going to go look through all the supplements. But so don't let like, oh, it's just a B vitamin complex, or it's just vitamin C, or it's just zinc. Like these things are the building blocks that your probably not getting through diet unless you've got your diet nailed, like drilled in. You're going to need to get some kind of supplement form of these. So, and again, if you have questions, NutrientPodcast at where?
Gmail.com.
Gmail.com. That sounded like an ad. That was good. So if you have high testosterone, there is really only one supplement I would recommend, at least on this episode, and that would be Inositol. I think specifically Inositol, if you can find it. I know you can find it, but like on Amazon. So Inositol, actually, this is really common with women with PCOS. It's more if you have high testosterone from insulin resistance or from I guess potentially obesity, like a blood sugar issue. But so inositol informs the body on how to rid sugar. So when inositol is low, insulin rises, which leads to insulin resistance and PCOS. So I don't feel like most guys on here are going to be like, I got high testosterone, can you help me bring it down? Like, unless you're on gear or which for the people that are listening, steroids, if you're not familiar, if you're doing steroids or like testosterone replacement therapy, basically I would just say kind of scale back what you're doing. But I've never had a client come to me and be like, my test is high, dude, like help me. So generally guys want that. If your testosterone is low, which I think more people are listening for. So zinc, first and foremost. These aren't in any order, but just in my list, first and foremost, zinc, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K, vitamin C, B6 specifically, magnesium, B9 or folate also specifically. Boron is another one. So some of these, you can get a good chunk of those through food, but you could also just get a really good supplement. Like I get boron, I specifically get Life Extension boron, and then I have a Life Extension trace minerals that has boron in it. I kind of alternate those, like one day on, the other one day off. But the trace minerals, Life Extension trace minerals, has zinc, it's got boron, it's got, I think, molybdenum. It's got vanadyl sulfate. It's got some stuff in there. I can't remember what everything is in there. But so again, if you have low testosterone, you're going to want to look at zinc, boron, vitamins D, E, K, vitamin C. B vitamins, you're going to want B6 and folate. You'll see the B vitamins pop up a lot too on more of this list, but just every single episode. I would really think that staple supplements everybody should be taking just to be kind of insurance would be for everything. Magnesium, vitamin C, a good quality B complex, zinc, and vitamin D. You do want to get levels tested. So specifically at vitamin D, because it's not very common. Vitamin D is usually the most deficient thing. I think vitamin D, it's 85 or 90% of the population is deficient in vitamin D. And then magnesium is also a very high deficiency, but we're I got the diet so dialed in for us and supplementation is so on point that we actually had high levels of vitamin D. So, and again, one of the mentors I'm working with was he wasn't really concerned until he saw vitamin D levels at 100 or higher, and mine were at 92, and Holly's was at 98. Yeah. So we have dropped vitamin D out of the supplement roster for at least a month or two. So the only thing we've dropped out with that, and we've stopped taking a direct multivitamin every day, but that's for another podcast, another day. So another thing that'll help potentially with low testosterone. This isn't really specifically a vitamin or a mineral, and I should have put this on the upcoming list, but I don't think it's there. Let me see if it is. I'll come back and I'll... no. So I don't want to... I would be remiss if I didn't mention carnitine. There's, I think, some evidence suggesting that carnitine would help boost testosterone levels. So, and there are different types of carnitine. I specifically use one called acetyl L-carnitine, and I believe it has a little bit more on the brain kind of protective effects. So, for estrogen, if your estrogen is high, again, I told you about the B vitamins, you're going to look at vitamin B6, vitamin B2, vitamin E, zinc, calcium, selenium, magnesium, cysteine, choline, folate, vitamins A, D, K, and C. So I feel like I said that slow enough, so if you need to rewind that, go back and rewind that. If you have low estrogen, magnesium, again, if you've noticed, like magnesium is on low testosterone, it's on high estrogen, it's on low estrogen. Magnesium is involved in like over 300 different chemical reactions throughout the body. And another thing to think about, if you are stressed, you're going to be burning through higher amounts of magnesium and higher amounts of zinc and higher amounts of vitamin C. So you want to make sure that you're getting not just like, well, the bottle said I'm getting 100%. Like I would, for me and her, I think we both do like about a gram of vitamin C in the morning and about a gram in the evening. Magnesium, I had a client tell me this earlier today that her doctor told her that with magnesium, basically, and this I've heard other functional doctors talk about this in the past, to take magnesium until you kind of get diarrhea from it and then scale it back. But nobody's like, oh, okay, I'm going until I get diarrhea, like diarrhea or bust. I don't know that that's necessarily the best strategy. But I do know, like, you do, if you're deficient in it, I think it pays off to take kind of higher amounts of it initially. And then you do want to scale it back. And I think adequate amount for women is like 350 milligrams a day. And for guys, I think it's 420 milligrams a day. I'm not pulling on my chronometer to make sure, but I think that's adequate. But so if you have low estrogen, magnesium would be a good one. Again, B vitamin complex, and then vitamin D. So in the B vitamin complex, guys, there's a ton of stuff out there. One of the things I would say, if you can, is to get some kind of a genetic report to find out if you have methylation issues, because that's something that you're definitely going to want to pay attention to when it comes to the B vitamins that you get. If you don't know, one way you might find out, first off, a fantastic resource to go to would be another podcast called Sam Miller Science. He's one of my current mentors. And if you go to Sam Miller Science and then search for methylation, he has a really good episode on that. It does get into the weeds way more than we do, but you would definitely learn something in there if you're wondering about methylation. My understanding of it is, like, if you do have methylation issues, you might just have higher anxiety. But if you don't know, just look for a good quality B vitamin. Like I said, Seeking Health, Thorn Research, Jarrow or Yarrow or whatever you want to say. So, so I think that's it for the core supplements.
So what would be the extra insurance supplements you mentioned?
Extra insurance supplements with air quotes, so you know it's real. So again, these are not essential to your body, but they may offer some extra benefit. All right, so here we go. So this is a little bit of a list, so be prepared to pause and rewind and write things down if you need to or if you haven't already. But if, again, don't get this complaint too often, at least from men, but if you have high testosterone, which is completely possible if you're a woman and you're dealing with PCOS, again, the Inositol, I'm not trying to make light of that. I'm just trying to make light of guys not complaining about high testosterone. But the PCOS, the Inositol would be one. Like, again, it helps decrease insulin sensitivity. EGCG, EPA, I can't remember what that stands for, but EGCG inhibits something called 5-alpha reductase activity, which increases sex hormone binding globulin activity, which, again, like we talked about, binds to testosterone and will kind of bring that up or bind that up. That's actually one thing. So some people use EGCG for weight loss because I think, is it an appetite suppressant? I can't remember, but I know EGCG is used for some people for weight loss. So if you're a guy using EGCG and you notice that you have low testosterone levels, you might want to look, and you can actually get your 5-alpha reductase activity tested through something I believe called the Dutch test. I think that's what you would do it through. And you might want to consider dropping the EGCG. So that's something to think about. So again, inositol decreases your insulin sensitivity. Another one that's really common for prostate health, saw palmetto, that actually will inhibit also 5-alpha reductase, and that reduces uptake of androgens in the body, basically. So for low testosterone, these are, again, I've got experience with a couple of these. You took forskolin, but so one is forskolin. It is Forskolin. Forskolin upregulates the androgen receptors and increases something called cyclic AMP, or cyclic adenosine monophosphate, which that works as a secondary messenger in the body, basically carrying biochemical signals between cells and hormones. So when you took Forskolin, I know it's been 2 years.
Wow.
Do you have any recollection of how that worked or helped? You seemed like you had more energy from it, like just better mood. But you've been kind of crabby lately, so I might try and buy you some of that.
Rude.
Totally kidding. But do you remember anything from your time with that?
I really don't. It's been a couple years.
Okay. I seriously do want to like look at getting you some Forskolin, but yeah. No.
I remember taking it, but that's about it.
Yeah. So these ones I do have experience with. So Tongat Ali, so Tongat. It's one word, and then Ali, like Muhammad Ali. Research suggests it can lower sex hormone binding globulin, which will indirectly boost testosterone, block estrogen, and functions as a libido booster. So if you are someone who is, an overweight guy who potentially might have, high levels of SHBG because of the insulin that we talked about earlier, and your estrogen levels are higher because you have a higher amount of body fat, which is producing more of that aromatase enzyme and lowering your testosterone levels, Tongat Ali might be a good option for you. I found out after getting it, for me, it's not something I want to do all the time because, again, like my estrogen is already fairly low. I'm actually trying to boost my estrogen a little bit for like the memory issues and joint pain and even like cardiovascular health. So I don't want something that's going to further block my estrogen. But again, that's where context is king. So Shilajit is probably my favorite word to say, but it's Shilajit. But Shilajit is Shilajit, and that basically it provides the most natural source of fulvic acid. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know everything that fulvic acid does. I just know it. You feel good. I think Shilajit helps boost ATP production in the body, so it's going to like increase your energy levels essentially. And I think it does something to the effect of when you take it with certain things, it basically like boosts the effect of the thing that you're taking it with. So I remember specifically taking SHBG with alpha lipoic acid, like it makes the alpha lipoic acid more effective. But Shilajit is essentially almost a daily driver for me. I take it almost every day. In addition, if you have low testosterone, really anything that you can take that will improve dopamine, that might also help, because dopamine and testosterone are kind of in the same ballpark. Like I said, like getting higher testosterone will help you have higher dopamine, and that will kind of help you want that again, a better ability to want to go do tough shit if you boost your testosterone because you boosted your dopamine. So one of the main things that would help boost the dopamine is tyrosine, and you want to make sure that you have, we need to do a neurotransmitters episode.
That'd be fun.
Yeah, but so take tyrosine. I've had some people that took tyrosine by itself and didn't get anything out of it. So you want to make sure that you're taking the cofactors that also help convert tyrosine to dopamine. I know B vitamins are part of that. So if you want us to do a neurotransmitters episode and talk about helping you, improve your motivation, help you improve your ability to learn and read, help you improve your ability to calm down at night, like let us know. Again, NutrientPodcast@gmail.com. So those would be for high and low testosterone. For high estrogen, there's a couple of them here, I think 3 altogether. So one is the letters CDG, or calcium D-glucarate. So calcium D-glucarate occurs in the skin of dark berries. It binds to estrogen in the body, so the body can then excrete estrogen in that detox process, or processes rather, that I talked about earlier. So there's an analogy that I've heard a few different times, but again, most recently by one of the mentors, would be like, think of your detoxification pathways as like a bathtub and then all of the pipes leading from the bathtub out of your house. So the first thing you have to do is kind of get the things like into the bathtub to get excreted out, and then you have to make sure that the drain on the bathtub is open, and then that going through the pipes out of the house into the sewer system is open. So it's kind of like, you know, a multi-step process. But calcium D-glucarate, or CDG, will actually help kind of get things into the bathtub. It binds estrogen and gets it ready to get out of there. So as far as like getting things out of the bathtub, that's going to be like different fibers, like psyllium husk powder. I didn't even put that on the list, but there's a bonus for you. Psyllium husk powder can help bind that stuff in your digestive system and excrete it out and poop it out. So I don't know why I went high pitch on that, but I did. There was something else I was going to say. Oh, calcium D-glucarate. Dose is important. I didn't know this until a couple months ago, but I did have Holly taking from time to time a Jarrow or Yarrow brand called, it was like DIM and CDG, but the CDG amount on that was not enough. So, sorry, yawn. Oh, imaginary edit guy, edit that out. The CDG amount on that was not enough. So you want to be taking like 500, I think, milligrams of CDG. I think at least, it might have even been a gram, but I think it was 500 milligrams. So we then got a different brand. It's one that damn it, I wish I had those so I could tell people. I don't want to have to go run back in the back and find them. But again, if you guys have questions on what brands we use for this, specifically for the CDG and DIM, just message us at where?
NutrientPodcast at gmail.com.
Bam! Nailed it. Making sure you weren't falling asleep on me. Mm-hmm. So CDG, like I said, that's a good one. DIM, or this is always a fun one to work your way through, but diindolyl methane is
Dindoli methane.
No, what was it? Say it again.
Dindolin
No.
methane.
Diindolyl methane. So it's one thing that going through chemistry helped me, is like understanding how to say big words like that. You just break them down. Or DIM. So people are probably somewhat familiar with DIM. It's bigger in like the bodybuilding community, where again, guys think that like you just want to get your estrogen as low as you can. So DIM is produced in the body from indole 3 carbinol, which is also found in cruciferous vegetables. This, again, it promotes healthy metabolism and detoxifies all 3 estrogen particles. So like I mentioned earlier, the test that you get if you do a sex panel is going to be E2 or estradiol that you see. You also have estrone, which is E1, and estriol, which is E3. E2 is like the healthy, like it's the good guy estrogen. That's what you want more of. So DIM or how was it said?
Dindoli.
Yeah, just we'll go with DIM. So that is, I need to go through and like every time we do a podcast. Well, no, you can definitely do these. So where was I? DIM. Yes, cruciferous vegetables. You can get it through cruciferous vegetables. Cruciferous vegetables being broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, things like that. I think it also is responsible, DIM is responsible for reducing aromatase activity as well. So, like I said, that would be one that I don't want to take, but like Holly has, good experience with. So, there was a time though, I think we went too long with it and we should cycle you off because it seemed like you were having some kind of excess testosterone issues. So, like, her voice got really deep.
No, it did not.
And she's like, "Hey, Frisch, are we doing this podcast or what?"
No, there's just some acne issues.
The fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah. She was, like, outlifting me on everything. She's like, "You're a little bitch." And
I did outlunge you,
She did not outlunge me.
I did outlunge you.
She lies.
Alan knows.
She lies. There was no outlunging. Nobody saw it. I checked the cameras that day. You never did it.
There were no cameras.
There was cameras all over. There are always cameras. All right, last one on the high estrogen, broccoli seed extract, aka sulforaphane glucosyl. Damn it.
Glucosinolate.
Glucosinolate. Yeah, glucosinolate. How about we just say sulforaphane? So most people, if you're not familiar with sulforaphane, you'll hear sulforaphane sooner or later. But broccoli seed extract is the supplement that you would actually get. This is another one that she takes because she has a family history of breast cancer. And again, like high estrogen can lead to that. So broccoli seed extract, aka sulforaphane, protects the body by supporting phase 2 liver detox and helps to eliminate estrogen metabolites like estrogen quinones and xenoestrogens. Xenoestrogens are basically estrogens like chemicals like and pesticides. Like they're xeno is like foreign, like outside, and then estrogen. So like estrogens, they're like coming from outside of the body. So wrapping it up, low estrogen. So if you're dealing with low estrogen, hell, I just realized like we just got this, and I didn't realize that would help with low estrogen. So woohoo! I'm gonna feel even better. So okay, number one for low estrogen would be Maca Root. So for women, there's a different. Okay, let me back up. Maca Root is an adaptogen for your adrenals, as well as regulating estrogen production. So yellow maca is best for women, and black maca is best for men. So the maca that we have, it's kind of like brown. Maybe it's like a black and yellow. Yeah, maybe they just mix them both. They're like, they'll figure it out. But it's Nootropics Depot, and I've definitely noticed improvement in mood using that. I mentioned it earlier in the supplements, but boron. So boron is one that I use Chronometer, or we use Chronometer rather, to track like our own food personally, but then as far as clients as well professionally. And I realized when I was going back, because I've known for a while that boron is like a building block of testosterone, and I went back to kind of check on like, what are my boron levels looking like? And Chronometer doesn't track boron. So I don't know if there's just not enough food data in there, or maybe I haven't found that setting and turned it on. But, and I had us having Brazil nuts because I thought they were high in boron, which they are not. Boron is in them, but you have to eat like pounds of it to get adequate boron. So boron would be one where it's difficult to get through food. I think raisins are a little higher in boron, but I'd still like just get it as a supplement. It's not very expensive, and you're looking to get like 1 to 3 milligrams a day of it. But boron directly increases estrogen and testosterone. And then kind of bringing it home, the last thing that would help with low estrogen is phytoestrogenic foods. And I quizzed you on this the other day. Holly Danielle, what does phyto mean?
Oh, Lord.
10 burpees if you can't remember this.
Phyto.
And this is PHYTO, not FIDO, like the dog.
Like plant?
Yeah, there you go. Yep. That's it, just plant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Plant.
Stop, you won.
But it says phytoestrogenic.
Well, yeah.
Let's finish the word.
I actually quizzed you on that word, didn't I?
Yeah.
Phytoestrogenic. I just remember quizzing you on phyto. So what does it mean? Phytoestrogenic.
Plants that make up estrogen.
Plants that make up estrogen. I love my wife. Yeah. So phyto is like the prefix for plant, like phytonutrients, like plant nutrients. Estro, obviously, like estrogen, right? And genic is like anything that like creates a thing, right? So phytoestrogenic are plant foods that will then like boost estrogen production. So the three most common kind of like subsets of phytoestrogenic foods are coumestans, isoflavones, isoflavones. I always say that wrong. Isoflavones and lignans. So, coumestan, and those aren't like foods, right? These are like categories of food. So, coumestan would be in alfalfa, in legumes, in chickpeas, and pinto beans. Pinto beans. Good Lord, I'm glad we're coming to the end because otherwise this would devolve quickly. Coumestan is basically in alfalfa, legumes, chickpeas, and pinto beans. Isoflavones are in soy and legumes. And then lignans, which is kind of my favorite and our favorite. What, lignans?
Yeah, lignin.
Yeah. You ain't from around here, lignin. Well, that's like kind of like the town that we live in.
Yeah.
So lignans would be in flax seeds, also in beans, fruits, and veggies. So we do specifically, especially once I found out my estrogen was low for a second year in a row, I've been doing more ground flaxseed. She also has been doing ground flaxseed, but then also like berries are a good source of lignans, like raspberries, blackberries, I think blueberries. So, but yeah, so ground flaxseed actually has high amounts of lignans, which again boosts estrogen. So, bada bing, bada boom.
Anything else?
Anything else? After all that, are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
I mean, I guess I kind of am, and I got educated, so.
That you did.
Yeah.
That you did. I hope we all got educated. So that is everything we got, guys, for episode number 22 of the Nutrient Health Project podcast. Holly's throwing the deuces. Chuck a deuce. Thank you so much for listening. Again, please give us a 5-star review. Give us a subscribe. Give us a share. If anything that we said in this episode helped you, share this shit with people you know. Let us know what you want to hear. Go ahead.
And say next week probably be
thyroid. Yep. Yeah,
okay.
Next week's going to be thyroid for sure because I'm excited to get into that one. So
Yeah.
we're going to talk all things thyroid and TSH and T4 and T3 and reverse T3 and maybe even go into some TPO and some TG and Hashimoto's and all kinds of good stuff. Yeah, and why, if your thyroid is down-regulated, why weight loss is going to be damn near impossible.
Yep.
So, not to mention constipation, not to mention, and this is where, like, this stuff kind of becomes, I keep going, this is where, like, if someone has thyroid issues, that's going to slow down their digestion, which would cause constipation, so that estrogen is not getting out of the body, so now that estrogen is hanging around more, which is going to cause more inflammation, and you can see how this stuff is all correlated, and it just starts wrapping up, and it's like, eat good food, drink water, get good sleep, stretch, don't be stressed out. Yeah, like, so simplicity, but make sure you get a good diet, supplements, training, lifestyle. That's what it's all about. Nutrient Health and Fitness, Andrew and Holly Frisch. Thank you guys for listening. We will see you on episode number 23 next week when we talk about the thyroid. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for sharing, subscribing, 5-star reviews. And Holly,
Have a great week.
have a great week. All right. Talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.